Listen carefully. This moment is not random, it is a holy interruption. Everything that stopped working, every plan that fell apart, every door that refused to open, none of it was punishment. It was heaven taking control. God is whispering into the silence of your confusion. It's my turn now. You thought your dream was dying, but it was being pruned. You thought you were delayed, but you were being developed. The collapse of your plan is the construction site of God's purpose. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. Heaven has a way of breaking your rhythm only to tune your heart to a higher frequency. Do you remember how confident you once were in your ability to make things happen? You knew what to say, who to call, where to go, and suddenly, none of it worked. It felt like heaven went quiet. But silence from God is not absence, it's preparation. When He hides, He heals. When He pauses, He plans. Right now, you are standing in the gap between what you expected and what God has destined. The tension you feel is not proof that you've failed, it's proof that you've outgrown what once fit you. God cannot let you settle for an ordinary outcome when a divine purpose is attached to your name. Every closed opportunity has been a whisper from above saying, "Trust me," not your pattern. You are learning to walk by revelation instead of routine. And that shift, though painful, is where your power is reborn. The Word of God reveals this mystery clearly. It was declared in the book of Job, chapter 23, verse 10. "But He knows the way that I take. When He has tested me, I will come forth as gold." This is not a season of punishment, it's purification. God knows exactly where you are and what you carry. The testing is not to destroy you, it's to expose the gold within you. You have been walking through the fire. But fire doesn't consume gold, it refines it. What looks like loss is actually transformation. So, stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "Prepare me." God's interruptions are invitations to maturity. You are being refined into something that can withstand more glory, more responsibility, more purpose. The delay is divine shaping. There are days when you can't understand why your prayers aren't producing visible results. But heaven's timeline is not delayed, it's deliberate. If you received what you prayed for too early, it would crush you. God withholds not to harm you, but to hold you steady until you are ready. The shift you are experiencing is not about things, it's about you. You are being transformed from the planner into the partner. God doesn't want your perfection, He wants your participation. When your plan fails, it's His way of reminding you that He never asked you to be the author, only the vessel. Let this sink in. The end of your plan is the beginning of His unfolding. The chapter you're afraid to close might be the very one keeping you from the revelation ahead. Trust the author. He never erases without rewriting something greater. There's something sacred in surrender. When you release your grip on how you thought life should look, heaven begins to rearrange everything you could never manage by yourself. You are entering a season where what once frustrated you will soon make sense. The detours were directions. The losses were lessons. The silence was strategy. You are not lost, you are being led. Every disappointment is a disguised doorway. You are standing on the threshold of a divine exchange, your control for His calling, your anxiety for His assurance, your striving for His stillness. And this message, this exact moment, is not random. Heaven pressed pause on your scroll because you needed this reminder. You were never in control to begin with. You are always being guided by unseen hands. So, don't rush to fix what God has allowed to fall apart. Let His plan breathe. Trust the divine delay. The moment you stop fighting for your way, you'll find yourself walking in His. If this word finds you where your plan failed, let it be your confirmation. You are not behind, you are in alignment. Now, take a breath. Let this word settle deep in your spirit. When you are ready, like this message. Share it so another soul can remember they are not forgotten. And subscribe so you can stay connected to every word heaven releases in this season. And as a prophetic act of surrender, type the number 999 inches, the comments declaring, "I release my plan for God's divine unfolding." And as you type it, feel the weight lifting from your shoulders. This is not the end, it's your divine beginning. Heaven has seen your surrender and is already moving in unseen places. The same God who closed those doors is now preparing to open new ones that no man can shut. When the door won't open, it's easy to assume something is wrong with you. You question your worth, your decisions, your timing. You pray harder, knock louder, and still silence. But what if the silence is mercy? What if the door that refuses to move is not blocking you but protecting you? There are moments in life when God allows you to stand before a closed door so that you will finally stop trying to force entry and start listening for instruction. Not every opportunity is ordained, and not every delay is demonic. Some of them are divine shields, saving you from paths that would have drained your purpose long before you reached the promise. You've been knocking, haven't you? On relationships that stopped responding, on plans that stopped producing, on jobs, ministries, and dreams that used to open easily. And when the sound of your knocking fades into the hollow echo of silence, you start to wonder if heaven has forgotten you. But silence doesn't mean neglect, it means something sacred is shifting. God knows the doors you can't yet walk through without losing focus. He knows the rooms that look good but are built on compromise. He knows the opportunities that shine bright but burn fast. Sometimes His greatest act of love is in the no. The divine no is not rejection, it's redirection wrapped in restraint. It's in these moments of locked doors that your faith matures. Faith that only celebrates open doors is fragile. But faith that can praise God in the hallway, that's faith that grows wings. It's one thing to walk through a miracle. It's another to worship while you wait for one. Scripture captures this mystery beautifully. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Do you see it? The word plans belongs to Him, not to your agenda, not to your timing, not to your expectation. That verse doesn't promise instant clarity, it promises divine certainty. God knows what He's doing even when you don't. The locked door you're facing might be keeping you in alignment with that plan. You've been praying for open doors, but sometimes God answers by closing the wrong ones first. He loves you too much to let you walk into a season you're not ready for. A closed door today could be the very reason you'll still be standing tomorrow. It hurts to wait. It hurts to see others walk into rooms that were similar to what you prayed for. But remember, comparison blinds you to timing. Their door is not your door. Your story is being written by different hands. You are learning to trust not just in what God provides, but in what He withholds. When He says, "Not yet," it's because he's arranging something that won't require you to beg, chase, or force. The door he opens will swing freely, because grace, not effort, will unlock it. Right now, heaven is working in dimensions you can't perceive. The reason you can't move forward is because there's still something being prepared behind the scenes. What if the delay you resent is actually divine choreography, placing people, timing, and opportunity in perfect sync? Sometimes God waits until the last possible moment, not to torture you, but to train your trust. When you can praise him before the answer, you are proving that your faith is anchored deeper than circumstance. That's where spiritual maturity is born, in the waiting hallways between closed and open doors. You're not being punished, you're being positioned. The same God who closes doors also holds the keys. Every no is leading you closer to the right yes. Every disappointment is refining your discernment, teaching you how to recognize heaven's fingerprints when the right door finally appears. So, take a deep breath. Step back from the door that refuses to open. Stop trying to force it. Rest in the knowing that what's meant for you will not require striving. The same hand that sealed this door is the one writing your next chapter. This moment is your invitation to shift from pushing to trusting. The hallway you're in is not a dead end, it's a divine delay. And when the time is right, that door will open so effortlessly that you'll look back and thank God it didn't open sooner. For now, remain still. Keep your faith steady. Heaven knows exactly which door belongs to you, and when it swings open, you will understand why every other one stayed shut. So, don't curse the hallway you're standing in. Every second of waiting is gathering divine momentum. When the hinge finally moves, it will not creak, it will thunder with purpose fulfilled. And when it does, you'll realize the waiting wasn't wasted. It built wisdom, patience, and clarity, 3 keys your destiny demanded before the right door appeared. There are moments when heaven hides you not to punish, but to protect. When you feel forgotten, it's often because God is forming something too precious to reveal prematurely. Hiddenness is not rejection, it's refinement. The pause you're living through is not wasted time, it's preparation in disguise. You've been asking why doors won't open, why answers seem delayed, why silence surrounds your prayers. But sometimes, heaven builds in quiet. God is doing more behind the scenes than you can imagine. The absence of visible progress doesn't mean he's absent. It means he's at work in dimensions your eyes can't yet see. This is your season of sacred concealment. He has covered you with divine camouflage, keeping you from distractions and premature applause. Because what's being planted in you now must take root before it bears fruit. The deeper the root, the higher the rise. Don't confuse divine silence with divine stillness. God is never still. He is strategic. Every hidden moment carries purpose. He's using the stillness to sharpen your spirit, teaching you how to hear his whisper over the noise of the world. You're being refined, trained, and tuned. You're not being ignored, you're being prepared for impact. The Word speaks to this mystery with power. As revealed in the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 3, I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summons you by name. Read that again, hidden treasures. God hides riches in places only faith can find. The season you're in is a treasure chest disguised as a trial. The delay you resent is the wrapping around something priceless. You're not missing out, you're being positioned to receive what others will never see because they refuse to wait. Hiddenness is heaven's strategy for strength. Before David held the crown, he learned worship in the wilderness. Before Joseph ruled in Egypt, he endured the hidden years of prison. Before Jesus preached to crowds, he walked in silence for decades. Every chosen one must pass through obscurity, because glory without grounding leads to collapse. You may feel overlooked, but you are right on schedule. The silence is not a sign of God's distance, it's a signal that something divine is germinating. Trust it. You are being sculpted for significance. The world might not see it yet, but heaven does. Right now, you are being shaped into someone who can carry weight without breaking, influence without pride, power without corruption. When the time comes, your unveiling will be undeniable, not because you demanded attention, but because your authenticity will command it. This hidden phase is your spiritual cocoon. What feels like confinement is transformation. You cannot rush emergence. You must let heaven finish weaving the wings that will carry you where your old self could never go. Don't despise the hidden place. It is where strength is born. Every unseen prayer, every uncelebrated act of obedience, every quiet moment of surrender, they're writing chapters in heaven's record about your faithfulness. And when your appointed time arrives, you will not need to announce yourself. Light never has to introduce itself. It simply shines. So right now, in faith, embrace the silence, cherish the unseen. Let God continue His divine shaping. The same silence that confuses you today will confirm you tomorrow. Now, if this message speaks to the season you're in, go to the comments and write, "Hidden but chosen." Say it as an act of faith, not frustration, because those 3 words declare, "I may be unseen by the world, but I am fully seen by heaven. I am hidden not because I'm forgotten, but because I'm being prepared." You are not waiting in vain, you are waiting in purpose. When you type "hidden but chosen," you are declaring that invisibility is not insignificance. You're saying, "I may be unseen, but I am not unloved. Heaven knows my name. My story is not stuck, it's still being written by the author who never wastes a word, a tear, or a season." When you write it, you are stepping into agreement with divine timing. You are telling heaven, "I trust your pace more than my plans." You are choosing process over popularity, preparation over performance. God hides those He loves deeply, because exposure without endurance destroys what was meant to shine forever. Typing those words is your act of surrender. It's the release of control. You are letting go of deadlines and human validation, allowing heaven to determine your unveiling. The hidden place is not punishment, it's the sacred forge of transformation where your destiny is shaped in silence before it is displayed in glory. Every time you whisper "hidden but chosen," you remind darkness that you cannot be dismissed. You are heaven's secret weapon, being refined in the quiet for a greater reveal. When the appointed hour comes, the same people who overlooked you will witness what God was building all along, His chosen one, emerging, radiant and unstoppable. There is a sacred threshold in every believer's journey where human strength fails and divine grace begins to breathe. It is the point where your prayers feel heavy, Your courage feels thin, and your endurance starts to tremble. That's the breaking point, the place where heaven meets humanity in the rawest form. It's not a sign of weakness, it's an invitation to witness God's strength. You've been pushing, haven't you, trying to hold it all together, to remain faithful even as everything inside you quivers. You've spoken faith when your voice was shaking. You've smiled while silently wondering if God still sees you. But what if this moment, this exhaustion, this ache isn't the end? What if it's the doorway to divine strength? Every chosen one reaches this place. It's where self-effort collapses and surrender begins. The breaking doesn't mean you've lost. It means you're being reshaped. God often lets the strong be emptied so that His power can fill them. When you reach the end of your ability, you finally touch the edge of His. We often think that God uses our talents, our victories, our polished parts. But more often, He works through our fractures. The places where you've been broken are the same places where His light will pour out. What feels like collapse is actually construction. Heaven rebuilds through surrender, not through control. It was declared in the book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 18, "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That verse isn't just comfort, it's confirmation. God is not waiting for you to become strong again before He draws near. He's here now. In the middle of your trembling, the nearness of God is not reserved for the victorious, it's promised to the broken. Every tear you've shed has been counted. Every sigh has been heard. When everything inside you feels shattered, remember that brokenness is sacred ground. It's the place where pride dies and purity is born. The chosen often feel pain more deeply, not because they're weaker, but because their hearts are wired for empathy, for intercession, for heaven's pulse. Your breaking is not random, it's refinement. You're being purified in the furnace of affliction. And while the fire feels unbearable, it's removing what can't remain. Impurities rise in the heat, but gold endures. The same way a potter's hands press and pull the clay, shaping it under tension. God's hands are shaping you. Pressure doesn't destroy His creation, it defines it. It's easy to pray for strength, harder to embrace the process that creates it. Sometimes you think you're falling apart, but really, you're falling into alignment. God allows pressure not to crush, but to carve. The pain you're experiencing is not pointless, it's purposeful. You may look at your reflection and see fatigue, failure, or fragility, but heaven sees foundation. The very cracks you hide are the conduits through which His presence will flow. Strength that hasn't been broken can't be trusted. Only those who've wrestled with pain can carry compassion without pride. Think of every biblical figure who met their breaking point: Elijah under the broom tree, Moses at the Red Sea, Peter after the denial, Paul in the prison cell. Each thought it was over. Each discovered it was only the beginning. Their collapse became their calling. Your story is no different. When you have nothing left to offer but your breath, God calls that worship. When you can no longer run, He calls that rest. When you fall to your knees, heaven calls that surrender. The breaking point becomes the meeting place where you stop striving and start trusting. Sometimes you wonder why the pain lingers. But what if the lingering ache is the mark of transformation, just as the scar remains after healing, a reminder that something once broken has become stronger, so too does the breaking leave a trace of grace. God does not waste wounds. Every fracture becomes a testimony. Every heartbreak becomes holy. You're not disqualified because of your pain, you're distinguished by it. The weight that tried to crush you will one day testify of the power that carried you. If you could see what heaven is building through this, you wouldn't curse your breaking, you'd bless it. You'd realize that this is not destruction, it's divine reconstruction. God is replacing your frailty with His fire, your tears with His truth, your chaos with His calm. So, if you are standing at the edge of yourself, shaking under the weight of your own humanity, know this: the end of your strength is the beginning of His story. The breaking point isn't where you lose, it's where you learn how to lean. And soon, when you rise again, and you will, you'll carry a softness, a strength, a wisdom that only the broken ever know. Because the chosen are not the unscarred, they are the ones who survived the shattering and still chose to shine. Every ending you've faced lately, the job that dissolved, the friendship that faded, the plan that fell apart, was never a random collapse. It was a divine setup. Heaven was closing chapters not to hurt you, but to make room for something holier, higher, and heavier with glory. The breakdown you feared is the bridge you needed. You see, when the door slammed shut, God wasn't taking something from you. He was shifting you to a space that could sustain your calling. What looked like a shutdown was really a setup. Every detour has divine direction hiding beneath it. Every disappointment is heaven's way of moving you from what is good to what is God. There are seasons where the stage goes dark so that the spotlight can reset. When the curtain falls, it's not the end of the play, it's the preparation for the next act. Heaven does its finest work behind the scenes. You may have thought the delay meant defeat, but every time God holds something back, He is rewriting it into alignment with His perfect purpose. There are some prayers He answered with no, not because you didn't deserve it, but because you deserved better. Scripture echoes this truth with timeless beauty. As the Apostle reminds us in his letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 28, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." All things, not some, not most, all. Even the parts that broke you, even the parts that didn't make sense, even the moments that felt like loss. Nothing in your story is wasted. God gathers every shard and turns it into stained glass, letting His light pour through the very cracks you tried to hide. You may not see it yet, but heaven has been building something beautiful through the ruins. The same place that felt like your burial ground will soon become your birthplace. You were never meant to live in the ashes, you were meant to rise from them. Sometimes, God lets your plan fail so you can finally meet His. You prayed for control, but He offered calling. You asked for comfort, but He gave you capacity. The shaking was never meant to break you, it was meant to awaken you. When everything stopped working, it wasn't the universe turning against you, it was heaven realigning you. You are not being stripped, you are being sculpted. The foundation of your faith is being strengthened so that when the wind comes again, you will not move. And maybe, deep down, you already know this. You've felt that tug in your spirit, the quiet assurance that there's something more, something unseen. The pieces that fell apart are starting to reveal their hidden pattern. And for the first time, the pain begins to make sense. So, as you breathe in this truth, let the weight fall off your shoulders. Let every why you've been asking rest in the presence of who. You don't need all the answers to walk in obedience. You only need trust. Now pause for a moment. Don't rush away. Let this word settle in your chest like a slow sunrise. What if this is your turning point? What if the loss you mourned was actually a gate disguised as grief? If these words stir something within you, let it be your heart's quiet yes. Not because you're told to, but because you choose to. If this message resonates, let your spirit respond freely. Maybe that yes looks like gently touching the heart to like this message, not out of habit, but as a soft way of saying, I receive this. Maybe it looks like sharing it, not to spread content, but to spread comfort, like passing a candle from one trembling hand to another until the whole room glows. Maybe it looks like subscribing, not as a transaction, but as a continuation of connection, a way of walking together through divine revelation, step by step, sunrise by sunrise. Let it be voluntary. Let it be sacred. Let every like, every share, every subscription become a seed planted in faith, a quiet whisper of alignment with heaven's unfolding story. Because when you choose to stay connected to light, you are declaring that darkness will never have the final word. When you choose to share hope, you are becoming the vessel heaven can pour through. So, don't do it for me. Do it as a whisper of gratitude for what God is unfolding in you right now. This is not obligation, it's overflow. This is not pressure, it's purpose. The act is small, but the meaning is eternal. You've walked through endings that tried to convince you your story was over. But heaven smiles, knowing that this very moment is where the real story begins. Because when your plan stops working, God's plan starts breathing. There is a rhythm in heaven that moves slower than the world, but deeper than time. When God goes silent, it is not because he has stopped speaking, it's because he is saying something too sacred for noise to translate. The silence of God often carries the loudest message. You've been in that space, haven't you? The quiet stretches long. Prayers seem unanswered. Plans seem paused. You begin to wonder if you've missed something. If maybe you should have done more, prayed harder, moved faster. But heaven's silence doesn't mean you're off track. It means you're in synchronization. There are codes written into divine silence, truths that only still hearts can hear. The world measures time in minutes and deadlines. God measures destiny in moments of obedience. His silence isn't punishment, it's precision. He is adjusting you, not ignoring you. Sometimes, when you can't hear him, it's because he's teaching you to trust him beyond instruction. He's showing you that faith doesn't always need confirmation to stay committed. When he quiets the heavens, he is listening for the sound of your trust. Silence is not the absence of God's voice, it's the classroom where faith matures. Think of it like the night before the dawn, dark, calm, seemingly still, yet full of unseen activity. Seeds grow in silence. Healing happens in silence. Transformation unfolds in silence. Scripture confirms this with gentle power. According to what is written in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, "For the revelation awaits an appointed time, it speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it, it will certainly come and will not delay." That's not a call to impatience, it's an invitation to trust the timeline of heaven. God's promises are not cancelled by delay, they're deepened by it. Every second of silence is a silent rehearsal for the sound of fulfillment. Maybe you feel like God has turned the volume down on your life, but he hasn't left. He's closer than you realize, working in the background, rearranging things for your benefit. Sometimes his silence is simply him protecting you from premature revelation. Some truths are so powerful that if revealed too soon, they would overwhelm you. You've been asking for signs. But what if silence is the sign? What if the pause is proof that heaven trusts you enough to walk by faith instead of sight? God's quietness is his vote of confidence in your strength to keep walking without constant reassurance. The same way a teacher stays silent during a test, God stays quiet to see if you remember what he already taught you. And when you hold steady through that quiet, heaven writes your obedience in its eternal ledger. So don't despise the quiet moments. They are holy ground. Let the stillness teach you patience. Let the silence stretch your faith. Let the unseen work of God anchor your heart deeper than the noise of the world ever could. You are not being forgotten, you are being formed. God's silence is the sculptor's pause before the next strike of creation. Every second of stillness is shaping you into something that will carry his glory without cracking. If this word meets you in the quiet, know this: the silence you fear is sacred space. Heaven is closer than your breath, nearer than your heartbeat. Now, as a prophetic act, one that says, I trust, even when I can't trace, go to the comments and type 5,555. That number carries the rhythm of grace in transition. It symbolizes the winds of divine change. The moment when silence breaks into movement. When you write it, you're declaring, my waiting is worship. My quiet is obedience. My faith remains unshaken. You are not stuck. You are being synchronized with heaven's next breath. Let that number be your whisper of agreement with God's timing. You're not waiting aimlessly, you're waiting faithfully. Silence is not your punishment, it's your preparation for the sound of breakthrough that is already on its way. When you type 5,555, you are declaring that grace is guiding your transition. Each 5 becomes a step of trust forward, not backward. It's a rhythm of surrender, a melody that only faith can dance to. You're saying, even when I can't hear him, I will still move in harmony with his unseen plan. That number carries a whisper of divine movement. It symbolizes release, the moment when what was held back begins to flow again. When you write 5,555, you are telling heaven, I choose faith over fear, patience over panic, and purpose over pressure. It's more than numbers. It's language between your soul and the Creator, who counts every heartbeat as worship. And when others see it, they'll feel that quiet courage rising too. Your comment becomes a candle, a signal in the night for those still walking through their own silence. Together, those numbers form a chorus of trust, echoing through the unseen heavens, reminder that waiting hearts are never abandoned. There are times when everything you once called stable begins to shift. The familiar crumbles, the patterns no longer fit, and even the dreams you once chased start to feel foreign. It's confusing, isn't it? You reach for what used to comfort you, and it no longer fits your hands. That's the rearranging of destiny, when God moves the pieces of your life into a pattern you can't yet see. You've been praying for change, and heaven heard you. But divine rearrangement rarely comes wrapped in calm. It often looks like chaos at first, relationships shifting, opportunities dissolving, directions reversing. The very things that once felt certain begin to lose their grip. And in that disarray, God is creating divine order. You see, God doesn't destroy what you built because He's cruel. He dismantles it because it can't hold what He's about to give you. Destiny requires new structure. Old systems can't sustain new anointing. You're not losing control. You're being led into alignment. Every chosen one faces a holy upheaval. The rearranging is not punishment, it's precision. God is untangling you from things that no longer serve your purpose. He's removing attachments that would anchor you to an outdated season. The disruption you feel is not a mistake, it's a message. You've outgrown this space. When God starts moving things around, it can feel like loss. People may fade from your life without explanation. Plans that once succeeded may suddenly fail. But every subtraction in the natural realm hides a multiplication in the spiritual one. What feels like decrease is often disguised expansion. God is not trying to hurt you, He's clearing the way for something greater. Think of a gardener pruning a tree. To the untrained eye, it looks like damage. But to the gardener, it's care. The branches that bear fruit are cut so they can bear more. And so it is with you. The rearranging is heaven's way of making space for the overflow. There's a pattern to divine order that human logic can't grasp. You might think you're being delayed, but you're being positioned. You might feel like everything is shifting out of place, but it's actually falling into place. God doesn't work by linear plans, He works by layered purpose. According to what is revealed in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1, there is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. That truth anchors every rearrangement. Seasons shift because purpose evolves. The very timing that frustrates you is the same timing that protects you. God moves slowly, not because He's hesitant, but because He's precise. When He rearranges your life, He ensures that every new piece fits perfectly into eternal order. Maybe you feel disoriented right now. Maybe you're standing in the middle of the pieces, unsure of how they'll ever come together again. But destiny is not built in straight lines, it's woven in divine patterns. What looks like disorder to you is choreography to heaven. God often dismantles before He delivers. He breaks what's temporary to rebuild what's timeless. You might not understand the process, but you can trust the heart behind it. When He removes something, He always replaces it with something stronger, purer, more aligned with your true purpose. Sometimes He rearranges your surroundings to rearrange your soul. He moves people, shifts circumstances, and even alters desires not to confuse you, but to call you higher. The things that used to satisfy can't anymore because your spirit has grown. The hunger in you is not emptiness, it's expansion. You are being reset for revelation. What was comfortable once would now confine you. That's why the familiar feels tight. It was never meant to contain what's being birthed inside you now. God is preparing to release you into a greater expression of yourself, one that mirrors His design more clearly than ever before. So, when life starts to rearrange itself, don't resist it. Let the pieces move. Let the changes unfold. Trust that even what feels like chaos carries divine choreography. The hands that are moving the puzzle know exactly how it fits together. You are not losing ground, you're gaining alignment. You are not being abandoned, you're being advanced. Every shift, every shake, every loss, and every surprise is part of a sacred rearrangement, crafting a destiny more radiant than you can imagine. And one day soon, you'll look back on this season and realize the truth: nothing was out of place after all. Everything moved according to divine design. So breathe, don't fight what's shifting. The same God who moved the mountains around you is moving the details within you. Every rearrangement is preparation for revelation. The floor may shake, but the foundation remains divine, and you will stand stronger when the dust of change finally clears. When clarity comes, you'll thank Him for every removal that made space for your renewal. You'll see how every door that closed became the wall that held your faith upright. Nothing broke you, it built you. The rearranging wasn't chaos, it was choreography written by the hand of heaven. There comes a time in every chosen one's journey when the familiar begins to fall away. The faces that once surrounded you fade. The places that once felt like home lose their warmth. And even the rhythms of your own habits start to feel foreign. It's not loneliness, it's transformation. Heaven is pulling you out of patterns that can no longer carry your purpose. You were never meant to remain where you started. Growth requires departure. When God begins to elevate you, He also begins to separate you. And that separation can feel painful, even cruel. But it is divine surgery. He is cutting away everything that limits your capacity to carry His glory. Sometimes you'll wake up one day and realize you've outgrown certain conversations. The same jokes, the same circles, the same pursuits no longer fit your spirit. That's not arrogance, it's awakening. God has expanded your heart beyond what used to hold it. The discomfort you feel is not rejection, it's realignment. Heaven does not allow the chosen to remain comfortable for long. Every time you begin to settle, something inside begins to stir. That unease is the Holy Spirit whispering, "There's more." You sense it in quiet moments. In the tension between gratitude and restlessness, you're thankful for what was, but you know you can't stay there. When God calls you higher, He often removes what keeps you grounded to the old. Friendships fade not because they were evil, but because their purpose in your life has been fulfilled. You can still love them, bless them, and release them without guilt. The absence you feel is not punishment, it's preparation. As the ancient words remind us, the voice of God thundered in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, verse 21. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. The cloud moves, and when it does, the chosen must move with it. You can't cling to yesterday's comfort when God's presence has shifted to tomorrow's assignment. To follow the cloud means to live in motion, trusting that every unfamiliar path is leading to promised ground. The Israelites learned that obedience often feels like exile before it feels like destiny. They left Egypt not knowing exactly where they were going, only that God was leading. You are walking that same path, leaving what's known for what's necessary. Faith doesn't always come with a map. Sometimes it just comes with movement. You might feel misunderstood in this season. People may question your distance, your silence, your change. That's all right. They can't see the weight you're carrying. They weren't meant to. God has hidden new instructions within your spirit that only obedience can decode. You're learning to hear His voice above the opinions around you. When you're called to greater things, isolation becomes instruction. The solitude you're experiencing is where revelation begins to grow. You're learning how to breathe in the quiet, how to discern in the stillness, how to listen without distraction. This is how prophets are shaped alone, yet never abandoned. You are being trained to depend fully on divine presence rather than human approval. That's why the circle has shrunk. That's why your routines no longer satisfy. Heaven has enrolled you in a higher curriculum, and not everyone can sit in that classroom with you. The path of the chosen often narrows before it expands. The wilderness may feel empty, but it's actually full of direction, full of instruction, full of unseen provision. The manna doesn't appear until you step away from Egypt. God's next miracle is waiting on the other side of your obedience. You may miss the familiarity, but don't romanticize what God has already released. Some doors are closed because your new identity can't fit through their frames. The places that once accepted you would now confine you. You've been enlarged spiritually, and expansion demands exit. So let the old fall away with grace. Don't chase what's fading. Bless it, thank it, and move forward. The cloud has shifted. The fire burns ahead. Your next chapter is waiting just beyond the reach of what's comfortable. And when you finally look back, you'll realize that nothing truly familiar was lost, only transformed. The people who are meant to continue with you will find you again on the higher path. The rest were divine teachers, temporary guides who helped you reach the edge of your destiny. This is not the end of belonging, it's the beginning of becoming. You are not being pulled away from love, you're being drawn deeper into purpose. God is stripping away imitation so He can give you authenticity. Embrace this moment of holy disconnection. Walk forward without resentment, without regret. Every step away from the familiar is a step toward fulfillment. You are crossing into a land where the air is thinner, but the vision is clearer. Keep moving with the cloud. Keep walking with the fire. What once felt like loss will soon reveal itself as liberation. The familiar had to fall away so the divine could fully unfold. There are moments when life seems to twist itself inside out, when what was meant to lift you up suddenly pulls you down, when what looked like victory turns into loss, and what felt like an ending begins to whisper of resurrection. This is the divine reversal, when heaven turns everything the enemy meant for harm into the very tool of your elevation. You've felt it, haven't you? The disappointment that cut deep, the betrayal that broke something inside you, the injustice that made you question your purpose. But here's the truth: God wastes nothing. He takes the pain, the confusion, the humiliation, and weaves it into glory. Every setback becomes a setup. Every wound becomes a window for His power to shine through. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. The tables are turning. What was meant to destroy you is being rewritten to define you. The very place of your pain is becoming the platform of your testimony. As the prophet Joseph declared through his story in the book of Genesis, chapter 50, verse 20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." That one verse holds the entire pattern of divine reversal. The hand that pushed you down will be the one forced to watch you rise. The pit that was meant to bury you has become your birthplace. God doesn't erase pain, He reassigns it. He transforms what was once bitter into something breathtaking. The enemy thought your silence meant surrender, but heaven knew it meant strength. While you were weeping, God was weaving. While you were doubting, He was designing. Every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, every tear on your pillow, they were all being gathered as raw materials for the miracle that's now forming. The divine reversal always begins quietly. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets, it unfolds with whispers. One day, you'll wake up and realize that the weight has shifted. that the atmosphere around your soul feels different. The same battles that once crushed you no longer have authority. The chains you carried are gone, and you didn't even see them fall. That's how heaven works, silently, powerfully, and perfectly on time. The moment you think it's over is the moment God begins to rewrite everything. He takes the lowest valley and turns it into the clearest view. Every reversal in Scripture followed the same pattern: defeat, delay, deliverance. Joseph's prison became his palace. Daniel's lions became his ladder. Esther's fear became her favor. What they all discovered was that pain is the soil where divine purpose grows. You are standing in that soil now. The reversal isn't coming someday, it's already underway. Heaven is shifting the ground beneath your feet, aligning everything that once opposed you into divine cooperation. You may not see it yet, but the evidence will come. The people who overlooked you will witness the overflow. The situations that seemed impossible will turn into undeniable proof that God still reigns over every detail of your story. And when that reversal becomes visible, it won't be about revenge, it will be about revelation. Because the victory isn't just for you, it's through you. Others will find faith again because of what God did in you. Your endurance becomes their encouragement. So, don't resent the season that broke you. It was the soil of your becoming. Every tear watered your next level. Every loss carved space for greater light. Heaven is inverting the equation. You are not beneath, you are being lifted. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. The humble will be exalted. The broken will be made whole. The forgotten will be found. This is the rhythm of reversal, the divine mathematics of mercy. And when you stand in that moment when everything you thought was wasted begins to bloom, you'll finally understand the storm was never meant to drown you, it was meant to deliver you. Now, take this moment and let it sink deep. Let it become your declaration, not just your comfort. Go to the comments and write, "I rise again," because those 3 words are more than defiance, they're prophecy. They declare that you refuse to stay buried in bitterness, that your ashes are becoming art, that your losses are birthing life. Heaven has already declared it. The divine reversal has begun. When you type "I rise again," you are not just commenting, you are making a covenant. You're telling heaven, "I believe that resurrection power still lives in me." Those words become a banner over every broken piece of your story, declaring that failure will not have the final word. Each time you write it, you awaken something ancient inside your spirit. You remind the darkness that you were designed to recover. You may have fallen, but grace doesn't count losses, it counts lessons. You are rising wiser, softer, stronger, and unstoppable. Let that phrase echo through your soul. It's your anthem of endurance, your whisper of worship, your victory already unfolding. You rise not by force, but by faith. The ashes you stand in today are not proof of your failure. They are proof that you survived the fire. Everything that once burned you has now purified you. You are standing in the middle of what tried to destroy you, and you are still breathing. That alone is victory. The pain didn't win, purpose did. What you thought was the end was actually the foundation. The ruins around you are not wasted remains. They're the building blocks of what heaven is about to raise. You see, the divine doesn't discard ashes, it anoints them. What the world calls wreckage, God calls raw material for resurrection. Sometimes the beauty of God's plan doesn't arrive in glittering form, it rises quietly from the smoke. You may not feel glorious, but you are being crowned even in the chaos. Heaven plants its greatest seeds in soil that's been broken open by pain. You can almost feel it, can't you? The shift within the stirring of strength, the flicker of peace that doesn't make sense, the gentle realization that the worst already happened, and you're still here. That's not coincidence, that's covenant. You are proof that ashes can shine. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verse 24, "Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." That is resurrection truth. Things must fall apart to multiply. Death always precedes the bloom. Your surrender didn't end your story, it multiplied its meaning. Every time you released something, every dream, every plan, every expectation, you gave God permission to resurrect it in a higher form. The anointing often hides in the ashes. The same fire that scorched your past is the one refining your spirit. You have been tempered like steel, stronger, sharper, ready. What once looked like devastation now reveals divine design. The pieces didn't fall apart, they fell into alignment. The world will never understand how something so broken can still glow. But heaven does. Because God doesn't anoint perfection, He anoints authenticity. And in your ashes, you've found something rare, the unshakable peace that comes when nothing is left to lose except fear. You are walking proof that the end is only a bend in the path of grace. The fire didn't consume you because there was something unburnable inside you. The embers around your feet are not reminders of destruction, they're the holy sparks of rebirth. Now, look at your hands, metaphorically. Spiritually, they may still carry traces of soot, but beneath them lies the oil of new beginnings. What's on you now is not the scent of smoke, but the fragrance of survival. Every scar tells the story of where the flame touched you, but failed to claim you. Pause for a moment here. Feel the stillness after the storm. That is sacred space, the breath between endings and beginnings. The silence where God starts to speak again. You've walked through fire, and now heaven is ready to reveal what it was all for. If something within these words ignites a spark in your spirit, let that response rise naturally. Don't force it, let it unfold like morning light. Maybe that feeling looks like quietly touching the heart to like this message not as a habit, but as an act of recognition. This speaks to my ashes. Maybe it looks like gently sharing it, not for attention, but to pass the flame to someone still lost in smoke. Maybe it looks like softly subscribing, not out of routine, but as a way of staying near the warmth of words that remind you of light. Let it all be voluntary, like placing a single flower on the altar of gratitude. Like, share, subscribe. Each act becomes its own quiet prayer, a whisper to heaven that you are still listening, still growing, still saying yes to resurrection. Because this isn't about numbers, it's about names, yours written in the firelight, glowing with grace. You made it through what others thought would consume you. You stood inside the storm and found stillness. And now, from the ashes, heaven will raise something only you could carry, a story soaked in survival, crowned in glory. You are living proof that God can build beauty from burned ground. The ashes were never your ending, they were your anointing. The ashes beneath you are not reminders of loss, they are evidence of rebirth. Every ember still glowing is heaven whispering, "You're not done yet." From dust, new breath always begins to form. You are not standing in ruins, you're standing in resurrection. What burned you has blessed you. The fire refined what fear once restrained. Now, only purpose remains. Let the smoke clear gently. For beauty always returns to scorched places. What rises from these ashes will not resemble what was lost, it will surpass it, shining with the quiet glory of one who survived. There is a crown that cannot be earned by striving, it can only be received through surrender. It is not made of gold or jewels, but of peace and divine authority. This is the crown hidden in surrender. You don't win it by fighting harder, you receive it when you finally lay your weapons down. The human heart resists surrender because it feels like loss. We're taught to control, to plan, to push, to prove. But heaven measures strength differently. The strongest are not those who never fall, they are those who know when to kneel. You were not designed to carry the universe on your shoulders. Surrender is not giving up, it's giving over. You have been in a battle within yourself, between the desire to trust and the instinct to take back control. You've prayed for peace, yet held on to plans. You've asked for divine will, yet feared divine timing. This inner tension is not failure, it's formation. God is teaching you the power of release. When you finally loosen your grip, something beautiful happens. The very things you tried to hold together begin to fall into place. Not because of effort, but because of alignment. Control drains, surrender flows. The moment you let go, grace rushes in. The crown of surrender is invisible at first. It doesn't sparkle, it settles. It descends quietly over the heart that has stopped fighting and started trusting. The one who bows low before heaven rises taller in the eyes of eternity. As was spoken in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Those words are not poetic advice, they are the secret to unshakable peace. When you stop leaning on understanding, you start resting on wisdom. You discover that trust is lighter than control, and peace is deeper than answers. Surrender is the language of the mature. It doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop clinging. It's not the absence of motion, it's the presence of meaning. You no longer need to manipulate outcomes or prove your worth. You start moving at heaven's pace instead of the world's pressure. Think about how rivers flow. They don't struggle to find direction, they follow gravity. Likewise, when you surrender to God, you move naturally toward what's meant for you. Resistance slows you down, but trust lets you glide. The more you release, the more you rise. Sometimes surrender means walking away from what no longer carries grace. Sometimes it means staying still when everything in you wants to run. Other times, it's simply breathing through uncertainty, whispering, "Your will, not mine." To the untrained eye, surrender looks like defeat, but in the divine order, it's the beginning of victory. Jesus himself showed us this truth in the Garden of Gethsemane, where the greatest act of power began with the simplest prayer of submission. The world was saved not through resistance, but through relinquishment. You are being called into that same posture, not to be passive, but to be peaceful, to walk without panic, to stand without striving, to believe that what's meant for you cannot miss you. The surrendered heart is untouchable because it no longer fears what the world can take away. Surrender will cost your pride, but it will crown your peace. It will strip away the illusion of control, but clothe you in the comfort of divine order. The more you yield, the more heaven can fill. There's a quiet dignity in letting go. It's the sound of chains loosening, the echo of control cracking open, the slow rhythm of grace reclaiming its space. You begin to see that you were never meant to force what faith was designed to form. And once you surrender, the storm loses its power over you. Because surrender doesn't change the wind, it teaches you how to sail with it. You start flowing instead of fighting, trusting instead of trying. It's in that surrender that your true authority awakens. When you yield to heaven, you inherit the peace that cannot be shaken, the clarity that cannot be stolen, and the strength that doesn't shout but shines. You no longer live with clenched fists but open hands. You no longer chase outcomes, you carry peace into them. That's what it means to wear the invisible crown, not dominance, but divine dependence. So, if you are weary of controlling, tired of fixing, and desperate for rest, this is your invitation. Not to quit, but to trust. Not to collapse, but to release. Heaven crowns those who know when to let go. And when you finally do, you will realize you never lost anything real, only what was holding you back. Because surrender is not the end of power, it's the beginning of purpose. And the crown that follows is not worn on your head, it's woven into your spirit, glowing quietly, radiant with peace. There is a stirring in the atmosphere, a shift that you can't explain but can feel. The air around you carries a quiet urgency, a sense that something is about to move. This is what it feels like to be marked for movement. Heaven has written your name in its divine rhythm, and everything around you is beginning to align with that unseen script. You've been sensing it for a while. The restlessness, the sudden clarity, the moments where you can almost hear the whisper, "It's time." You may not know where the path leads, but you know staying still is no longer an option. God is calling you from comfort into courage, from silence into significance. The chosen always know when the shift begins. The familiar becomes too small, and the heart begins to beat with a new pattern. It's not anxiety, it's acceleration. God is preparing to move you into places that your feet have never touched, but your spirit has already seen in vision. Change can feel like chaos when you don't yet see the map. But heaven never moves without reason. When the winds start to blow, they don't come to destroy, they come to direct. Every gust of divine motion is guided by intention. This is not random transition, it's sacred transfer. God is relocating you emotionally, spiritually, sometimes even physically, to position you for promise. You are not being displaced, you are being placed precisely. We are reminded through the writings of David in the book of Psalms, chapter 37, verse 23, "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him." That means the path is not your responsibility, the pace is. You only need to keep walking. Every step you take in obedience becomes part of heaven's choreography. The path doesn't appear until you move, and when you do, the ground itself begins to respond to your faith. God has marked you for forward motion. The old cycles can't contain you anymore. You've learned too much, grown too deep, stretched too wide for the same surroundings. That's why old environments suddenly feel heavy. Why old habits start to irritate your spirit. The shift is proof of expansion. There's movement happening in silence, even when you can't see it. People may misread your stillness, but God knows its readiness. You are gathering strength for the next stride, storing revelation for the next release. Heaven doesn't rush, it readies. And when that divine moment arrives, things will start to unfold quickly. What took years to build will suddenly make sense. Conversations, opportunities, alignments, they'll come together with ease, not effort. That's the rhythm of divine movement, grace flowing faster than striving ever could. You might not feel prepared, but you are positioned. God never sends motion without meaning. The same hand that stirs your heart will steady your steps. You are about to experience what happens when obedience collides with timing, doors open without knocking, paths clear without striving, and favor finds you without chasing. Every chosen one carries a unique momentum. Yours has been forming quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a tide beneath the surface. But now the tide is turning, and the current of your calling is pulling you forward. Don't resist it, ride it. It's time to move, not in panic, but in peace. The ground may shake, but it's not breaking, it's birthing. What's happening around you is heaven's way of saying, you've been marked, and movement has begun. If you can feel that stirring in your spirit, if you know this word meets you in motion, take a step of agreement right now. Go to the comments and type 2222. That number is a declaration of divine alignment. It represents partnership between your obedience and God's order. When you write it, you are saying, I trust the direction, even if I can't yet see the destination. It's not superstition, it's symbolism, a sign between you and heaven that you are ready to move. Type it in faith, not fear. Let the act become your quiet yes to destiny, because once heaven marks you for movement, nothing can keep you where you were. The winds have shifted, the path is unfolding, and grace is already moving ahead of you. When you type 2222, you are declaring to heaven, I am ready to move with divine timing. You're no longer resisting the shift, you're partnering with it. Each two becomes a step of agreement, a rhythm between your faith and God's unfolding plan. That number carries the vibration of alignment and balance. It speaks of doors opening in perfect sequence, of paths forming beneath obedient feet. When you write 2222, you're saying, even if I don't see the full map, I'll follow the compass of peace. You are walking by revelation, not routine, and heaven sees it. Every number typed becomes a whisper of surrender, an echo of readiness. You're not waiting for movement anymore, you are movement. The chosen don't chase opportunity, they become it. Breakdown and breakthrough often look identical in their early stages. Both involve shaking, both involve endings, and both require surrender. The difference lies not in the chaos, but in what's being created through it. Breakdown tears down what was built on weakness. Breakthrough reveals what's been built on wisdom. You've walked through seasons where the ground beneath you cracked, where what once supported you began to give way. You thought you were losing stability, but heaven was removing false foundations. What looked like collapse was actually construction. You were not falling apart, you were falling into alignment. Breakthrough never begins in celebration. It begins in confusion. The moment before the light appears is always the darkest, because that's when faith has to lead instead of sight. You can't feel it yet, but something sacred is breaking open. The ground of your spirit is trembling Because new life is pushing through. There's a pattern to divine breakthrough. It follows surrender, not striving. Every time you stopped fighting what God was dismantling, a new door quietly appeared. Every moment you chose prayer over panic, heaven began to move what you couldn't. You may not recognize it now, but every heartbreak was a hammer shaping your strength. Every closed opportunity was protection disguised as disappointment, and every tear was watering the soil of your next harvest. As written in the book of Micah, chapter 7, verse 8, "Do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light." That verse carries the heartbeat of breakthrough, the defiance of despair, the refusal to stay down, the audacity to expect dawn even in the dead of night. The enemy thought the fall would finish you, but it only taught you how to rise. Breakthrough is not a sudden event, it's a slow awakening. It begins when you stop begging for escape and start embracing transformation. The situations that once broke you now serve as mirrors, reflecting how far you've grown. What once terrified you now trains you. What once silenced you now strengthens your voice. When God begins to shift your story, He rarely announces it. Breakthrough slips in quietly, often disguised as exhaustion, confusion, or stillness. You may wake up one morning and realize the weight that pressed you for years has vanished. The bitterness has lifted, and peace sits where pain used to live. That's how breakthrough feels: gentle, not grand. The chosen are refined through resistance. You can't break into new dimensions without pressure. The butterfly must wrestle out of the cocoon to strengthen its wings. Likewise, your struggle was not meant to destroy you, it was designed to empower your emergence. Heaven allows the shaking to reveal what cannot be shaken. Every trial tests the truth of what you've built upon. The strongholds that once trapped you are being replaced by strength within you. The enemy doesn't fight the weak, he fights the ones about to rise. That's why your battle has been so fierce, it's because your breakthrough is near. Don't mistake breaking for breaking down. You are not collapsing, you are expanding. The cracks you see are evidence of capacity increasing. God is stretching you beyond the limits you thought defined you. What felt like pressure was actually permission to grow. The noise of this season may have been loud, but soon there will be silence, not the silence of absence, but the silence of completion. The same God who allowed the storm is the one calming it now. You will not leave this season empty, you will leave it established. When you step out of this process, you won't just be healed, you'll be holy. You'll carry a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a strength that doesn't shout, a joy that doesn't fade. That's the mark of true breakthrough. It transforms identity, not just reality. So, let the process continue. Don't rush it. The same God who began this good work is faithful to finish it. You don't need to force anything. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment has been part of the design. And when the moment comes, and it will, you'll find yourself walking in places that once felt impossible. You'll realize that what once broke you has become the very testimony that builds others. Breakthrough doesn't erase your past, it redeems it. The ashes of yesterday become the anointing oil of today. The lessons become legacy. The scars become signatures of survival. You are not who you were before the breaking. You are wiser, deeper, purer, and stronger. Heaven has rewritten your definition. You are no longer a victim of the breaking. You are the vessel of the breakthrough. Breakthrough isn't a single moment. It's a lifetime awakening. You'll breathe differently, see differently, love differently, because the breaking didn't end you. It revealed the divine strength within you. Now, every sunrise feels sacred. You no longer chase freedom, you embody it. The chains that once restrained you have become reminders of how unbreakable your spirit truly is. At last, the fog begins to thin. You start to see what was once hidden, the divine redirection revealed. The questions that haunted you, the delays that confused you, the detours that once felt cruel, all begin to make sense. You realize that God was never denying you, He was directing you. The map of your life wasn't wrong, it was just written in a language that only time and trust could translate. Redirection is one of the most misunderstood mercies of heaven. It often wears the disguise of disappointment. You prayed for one thing and received another. You waited for a door to open and watched it seal shut. You wept over what you thought was lost, not realizing that God had already prepared something greater just beyond your view. Every no, every pause, every silence carried purpose. The moments that seemed wasted were quietly weaving the foundation for something higher. Divine redirection is never random, it is precise, purposeful, and personal. Heaven knows the exact route that leads to your fulfillment, even when your eyes see only detours. As the prophet Isaiah proclaimed in the book of Isaiah, chapter 55, verse 8, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." That verse holds the key to peace in redirection. You may not always understand the path, but you can always trust the planner. The very fact that things shifted is proof that heaven intervened. God redirects not because He is uncertain, but because He sees danger, distraction, and delay long before you do. Sometimes He redirects by closing doors, other times by changing desires. What once felt urgent suddenly loses its pull. The people or plans that once defined you begin to fade. And though it hurts, something deeper begins to awaken. God's redirection doesn't just move your feet, it matures your heart. If you think back, you'll notice the pattern. That relationship that didn't last, the opportunity that fell through, the plan that unraveled, all of them seemed devastating in the moment. But had they succeeded, they would have trapped you in smaller versions of yourself. God's mercy sometimes looks like loss because we can't yet see what it's saving us from. Divine redirection is not about punishment, it's about placement. God doesn't remove you from things that bless you, He removes you from things that block you. When He says no, it's because His yes requires room to bloom. There are seasons when God has to let certain things crumble, not because they were evil, but because they were temporary. You can't carry permanent purpose in temporary containers. So, He allows the structures around you to shake until only what's eternal remains standing. And though you cried while watching some dreams fade, heaven was already building better ones behind the veil. What you lost wasn't taken, it was traded. The exchange was invisible, but divine. When the redirection first comes, it feels like walking blindfolded. You move by faith, not sight. You take steps without knowing where they lead, trusting that each one lands in grace. Then, slowly, the scenery changes. What once felt foreign starts to feel like home. The pain of letting go gives way to the peace of belonging. You begin to understand that God didn't abandon you in confusion. He was guiding you through it. His silence wasn't absence, it was alignment. Every unanswered prayer was heaven whispering, "Not this way. Child, follow me instead." And now, as you stand on the other side, perspective becomes your praise. You see the divine fingerprints all over your journey. The very detours you resented have delivered you directly into destiny. The places you tried to avoid became the pathways to promise. Redirection reveals the depth of divine love. Because love doesn't always say yes, it sometimes says, "Wait," or "Turn here." Love that truly protects will reroute even the most determined soul if it senses danger ahead. That's why God didn't let you settle where you wanted. He saw what you couldn't. He redirected your steps not to delay you, but to deliver you to divine timing. The wilderness wasn't wasted. It was the classroom where you learned to hear His voice. The detour wasn't punishment, it was preservation. And when you reach the destination He designed, you'll realize that nothing was lost in the turning, only refined. Every path, every pause, every painful pivot brought you closer to purpose. The redirection was revelation in disguise. So now, when something shifts unexpectedly, you no longer panic. You've learned the rhythm of heaven. You trust the reroute. You follow the quiet tug instead of the loud temptation. And even when you don't understand, you whisper, "Lead me again." Because you've lived long enough to know this truth, divine redirection is not the end of the journey, it's the beginning of understanding. You were never off course. You were being guided by unseen grace. There is a moment when the curtain begins to rise, and you realize heaven was never silent, it was staging. All that delay, all that darkness, all those nights when you felt forgotten, they were not wasted. They were building the stage for the unveiling of divine glory in your life. The light is shifting now. The atmosphere feels different. It's as if heaven itself is taking a deep breath, ready to reveal what it has been preparing within you. The waiting, the weeping, the wondering, it all led here. This is the unfolding glory. You once thought your story had ended in ashes, but God has a way of turning endings into openings. The glory that's emerging now is not coming from your success. It's rising from your surrender. Every yes you whispered in faith, every tear you shed in trust, every time you chose obedience over comfort, it's all echoing now in heaven's chamber of remembrance. Glory never appears suddenly, it gathers quietly. It grows like dawn, slow but certain, touching everything it once seemed to bypass. You are standing in that glow now. The glory of God is not just around you, it's within you, shaping your words, guiding your steps, softening your heart. As Jesus prayed in the Gospel of John, chapter 17, verse 22, "I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one." That is not a distant promise, it's a present reality. Glory is not something you chase, it's something you carry. It manifests when your life becomes transparent enough for heaven's light to shine through. Every scar, every healed wound, every redeemed failure becomes a window where glory leaks out. You have become a living canvas, one painted by the brushstrokes of grace, and the masterpiece is nearly complete. Heaven didn't forget you, it was framing you. You are not being prepared for recognition, you're being prepared for reflection, so that when the world sees you, it sees Him. And maybe that's what this season has truly been about. Not your name being known, but His nature being shown. Not your plans succeeding, but his presence prevailing. The glory of God unfolds not in noise, but in nearness. It arrives when the striving stops and the stillness starts to speak. So here you stand, in the holy hush between what was and what will be. You've been through breaking and rebuilding, through tears and triumphs, through silence and song, and through it all, something sacred has settled in your soul, peace. That peace is the beginning of glory. It's not loud, it's luminous. It doesn't need to be announced, it only needs to be allowed. You are no longer trying to earn favor, you are learning to embody it. You are no longer chasing validation, you are radiating value. And as this light unfolds around you, let your spirit respond in whatever way feels true. Maybe that looks like quietly liking this message, not because you're told to, but because your heart recognizes its reflection. Maybe it looks like sharing it not as content, but as communion, passing a spark of hope to another soul still standing in their shadow. Maybe it looks like choosing to subscribe not as an obligation, but as a continuation, a way to stay near to the current of words that keep reminding you of who you are becoming. And if this message has touched something deep within you, if you feel heaven breathing through these words, perhaps you'll even pause to leave a comment, a simple sentence, a fragment of your own unfolding. Because testimonies are how glory travels, each one becomes another note in the song of awakening that heaven is writing through us all. Let every action be voluntary, every gesture sacred. Don't do it for me, do it as a silent act of worship. Let every like be a pulse of gratitude, every share a spark of spreading light, every comment a ripple of revelation, every subscription a quiet yes to walking with heaven a little longer. This is not about engagement, it's about embodiment. It's not about numbers, it's about names. Your name, written in light. Your life, glowing with the glory that cannot fade. You have walked through the valley of shadows and come out shining. What once broke you has now crowned you. The unfolding glory isn't coming soon, it's already here, breathing through your lungs, pulsing in your heart, reflecting in your resilience. And if anyone ever asks how you found your way through the darkness, you can simply smile and say, I stopped fighting for control and started glowing with grace. Because when obedience meets surrender, the result is always the same, glory that unfolds quietly, yet changes everything it touches. And as that glory continues to unfold, remember, it was never meant to stay within you. It's meant to spill out, to touch, to heal, to illuminate every life you encounter from this moment forward. The air feels different, now lighter, quieter, sacred. You are walking in the new blueprint. And though the path still stretches ahead in mystery, there is peace in every step. What once felt uncertain now feels orchestrated. What once frightened you now fills you with quiet awe. You are no longer surviving the story, you are walking in its divine design. There is a new rhythm guiding your days. You notice it in the small things, how your heart no longer rushes, how your thoughts no longer spiral, how the same silence that once haunted you now comforts you. This is what it means to live by divine design, not to control, but to cooperate. You are moving with heaven's heartbeat now. The blueprint you once tried to draw has been replaced by something more fluid, something more alive. God's design isn't a map, it's a melody. Each day adds a note, each act of obedience another chord. And together they create a song that heaven recognizes as uniquely yours. You no longer walk by fear, but by familiarity with his presence, his pace, his peace. The need to plan every detail has been replaced by the freedom of trust. You are learning to live in alignment rather than anxiety, to listen rather than labor. Every step you take is guided, even when it doesn't look like progress. You've learned that movement isn't always visible, sometimes it's internal. God is more interested in what's forming within you than what's unfolding around you. The foundation of this new blueprint is faith. According to what is revealed in the book of Philippians, chapter 1, verse 6, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. That is your anchor. The work isn't finished, but it is faithful. You are not being rushed, you are being refined. Every delay is detail. Every quiet day, another stroke of divine precision. The architect of eternity is still sketching your tomorrow with hands that never tremble. This new life doesn't demand perfection, it invites participation. You don't have to see the full plan to trust the planner. You've learned that clarity is overrated when confidence in his character is enough. The blueprint is written in layers of grace, built on the foundation of surrender, held together by the beams of faith. You can feel that your steps are steadier now. There's a rhythm of rest within your motion. You've stopped striving for outcomes and started flowing with divine outcomes. Where you once prayed for answers, you now ask for awareness. Where you once sought direction, you now seek deeper dependence. Walking in divine design means seeing differently. You look at detours and no longer call them delays, you call them designs. You watch people leave and no longer label it loss, you call it release. You face uncertainty and no longer name it fear, you call it faith in disguise. You've begun to understand that every season has a shape, and none are wasted. The cold of winter prepares the soil, the silence of night strengthens the roots. Even what doesn't look divine still works for divine purposes. This new blueprint teaches you balance. It's not about constant activity, it's about consistent awareness. You are learning to rest while walking, to trust while building, to breathe while believing. Each moment has become an altar, each breath a prayer. You no longer ask God to bless your plans, you ask Him to make you His plan. That's what transformation does. It rewires ambition into alignment. You are not chasing destiny, you are walking with it. Step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. When storms arise now, you don't panic, you pause, because you know that the same God who wrote the blueprints also controls the weather. The winds that once scared you now serve you. They clear the air, redirect your steps, and remind you that you're still being guided. And even in the unknown, you've found your footing. You've discovered that divine design doesn't remove mystery, it redeems it. You no longer fear what you can't predict because you've learned to love what you can't control. The old you chased proof, the new you carries peace. The old you worried about paths, the new you worships while walking. The old you prayed for signs, the new you lives as one. You are no longer trying to become, you are being. This is what the new blueprint feels like: light in motion, peace in progress, faith in form. Every breath is evidence that the design is still unfolding. You're not late. You're not lost. You're living in alignment with eternity's pattern. And when you look around, you start to see traces of heaven everywhere, in conversations that heal, in silence that restores, in the gentle unfolding of ordinary days that carry extraordinary meaning. You've entered a rhythm where heaven and earth overlap, where prayer feels like breathing and peace feels like gravity. You are walking not beside God, but within His plan. You've become the blueprint brought to life. And then it happens, the moment when all the scattered threads begin to weave together. The chaos that once surrounded you settles into clarity. The confusion that clouded your heart lifts. And you realize what this journey was always about. It was never about plans failing, it was about divine purpose unfolding. This is the moment when God's plan fully reveals itself, not in thunder, but in stillness. You can see now how every detour was deliberate. Every tear had timing. Every heartbreak had hidden purpose. What once felt like fragments now fits perfectly into the tapestry of destiny. The same road that once felt winding now forms a pattern so intricate, so beautiful, that it could have only been drawn by divine hands. God's plan is rarely loud. It doesn't demand attention, it simply arrives. Like dawn creeping across a weary horizon, you look back on the valleys, the losses, the prayers that seemed unanswered, and you realize they weren't unanswered. They were being answered differently. Heaven never said no, it said, "Not yet." And the waiting became your greatest teacher. You begin to see how wisdom was hidden inside the waiting, how strength was built in the silence, how faith was refined in the fire. Every moment that confused you was carving something eternal inside you. You thought you were waiting on God, but all along, God was waiting on you to trust, to release, to grow into the version of yourself that could carry His promise well. As written in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 12, the Lord said to me, "You have seen correctly, for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled." That verse becomes a mirror. You realize God was watching not to judge, but to nurture. His word over your life was never abandoned, only maturing in silence until it was strong enough to manifest. He watched over every season, every test, every time you broke and rebuilt. You were never alone. You were always being observed by love. The beauty of divine unfolding is that it makes sense backward. You couldn't understand the purpose in the pain when you were in it. But now the view from this mountain reveals the meaning behind every valley. You see the pattern, the heartbreaks that led to healing, the failures that led to faith, the endings that birthed beginnings, and you smile not out of pride, but out of peace, because now you know nothing was random. Every chapter was essential. Even the parts you prayed to erase became the very ink that shaped your testimony. You've become someone different, someone deeper, softer, and stronger all at once. You no longer chase plans, you live in purpose. You no longer fear delay, you trust divine detail. The control you once clung to has turned into calm confidence. God's plan doesn't remove hardship, it redeems it. The fire didn't vanish, but you learned to dance in it. The waves didn't stop crashing, but you learned to walk on them. The storms didn't disappear, but you discovered they were carrying you forward. Every challenge became a chisel, shaping your destiny. The divine plan was never about making life easy. It was about making your spirit eternal. You've discovered that destiny is not a destination, it's a way of seeing. You now view every moment through the lens of grace. Every step feels intentional. Every breath feels like worship. You walk differently now, steadier, slower, wiser. You no longer panic when paths shift, because you know the planner. You no longer doubt when doors close, because you've seen what he can open. You no longer question the silence, because you've learned to hear the symphony hidden inside it. Everything you once feared losing has either returned, renewed, or been replaced with something greater. You are no longer living by reaction, you're living by revelation. The divine unfolding has not just changed your life, it has changed your language. You speak peace where you once spoke panic, gratitude where you once spoke grief, trust where you once spoke control. And perhaps the most miraculous part of all is that you wouldn't change any of it. The pain, the pauses, the pruning, all of it led you here. You've tasted grace too deeply to resent the process that delivered it. When you look at your reflection now, you see traces of divinity, not because you are perfect, but because you are proof that God finishes what he begins. His plan was not delayed, it was deliberate, and in his timing, it always blooms. The unfolding is complete, but not concluded. You will keep walking, keep growing, keep discovering new depths of his design, because God's plan doesn't end, it evolves. Every step you take from here is simply another petal opening in the flower he planted long ago. And as you move forward, remember this truth etched in the depths of your soul. You were never waiting for your plan to work out. You were waiting for his plan to come alive in you. Now it has. And now you stand here on the other side of every shadow, every silence, every shaking, still breathing, still believing, still becoming. You've walked the long road from your plans falling apart to God's plan unfolding in perfect precision. You've seen how pain can purify, how delay can direct, how surrender can crown. You have become the living evidence that heaven never abandons what it begins. This moment is sacred. Let it settle in you. You are no longer chasing the light. You are the light that has learned to glow even in darkness. Everything you've faced, every lesson you've carried, every word that found you here has brought you to this breath of divine recognition. You are chosen, and you are ready. If these words have met you somewhere deep, don't rush away. Sit with them. Let them move through you like a quiet river finding its path again. And if your heart feels stirred to respond, let that response be gentle, honest, and true. Maybe that looks like softly liking this message, not for approval, but as an act of agreement that your spirit understands what your eyes have seen. Maybe it looks like sharing it, not as content but as communion, passing a spark of faith into someone else's midnight. Maybe it looks like leaving a simple comment, a sentence that carries your own unfolding truth, your own yes to the divine story still being written through you. And maybe, if your soul feels called, it looks like quietly subscribing, not as a habit, but as a way of staying near to this space where heaven and hope keep meeting you in words. Let it all be your choice, your worship, your whisper. You've journeyed this far by faith. Let gratitude be your next step. The story continues, and so do you.